Hi, this is Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. So I want to talk about group dynamics, energy, and roles in a magical group, be it traditional coven kind of structure or any other kind of magical workings. And the thing is that groups are composed of individuals who have a lot of different levels of understanding, competency, and so forth around the work that they're doing. The ideal is that people are doing their own inner work. They're separating themselves. They're in that inner work. They're being able to separate their ego from what's happening in the circle and not take things personally, but sort of develop an overview of the greater purpose of the group and what's going on and why you're there. And that's kind of a basic component of a successful group. There are personalities and conflicts that arise because people misunderstand one another or speaking a different language. People haven't done the inner work that they need to do in order to become healthy uh, in themselves. And so they then react to external stimulus, or they assume things are happening that are different than what they are. So one of the important components of effective group work is communication. And communication doesn't mean just being able to talk to each other, but it means to actually understand and comprehend each one of us, where we're coming from and so forth. And then figuring out what the common goals are for the group and what the common denominators are within the group. You also have to identify the issues or lack of experience or problem areas that each person is dealing with, because none of us is complete when we get started into this, and probably never are complete. I doubt that that ever actually happens where we have nothing to work on ourselves. So the roles as they are, um, talking as the role of the high priestess as a starting point here. There's a lot of misinformation, I think, out there about what a high priestess is and what she does. I'm sure media and books and so forth are part of it. And some people get involved in the ego of that as a title, thinking of themselves as more important than other people, which is the wrong approach to take if that is the role that you end up having in a group. First off, a high priestess probably needs to be a medium channeler of some kind. If the goal of the group is for someone to embody the energy of the goddess or the god. In order to be able to do that, you have to be so centered within yourself that you can then step aside and allow the energy to come in and through you and allow it to flow as it will, which can be a challenge in any given circumstance. So, so that would be a skill set that you would look for in a high priestess, and also the ability to read the energy in the room to see what's happening between the people that are there in the group while they're doing their magical operations, whatever it is the group is doing, whether they're meditating or what have you. For example, when our group started doing the sacred tree meditation as a group, as we went through it over a period of many months, I could see energetically how it was changing the energy of the group and how the the actual effect of it was transforming what we were doing. So, like when you're doing that meditation, the sacred tree meditation for yourself, and you're joining through the ground, through your roots, and into the earth, and you're connecting that way and connecting to the universal light and so forth as a person, as an individual, then you're doing it just for yourself. When you start to do it as an actual group together, when you meld at some point during that exercise, those roots that you're all putting down will start to intertwine amongst each other. And then all of those trees that you think of yourself as in the visualization become the outside of a larger tree. And so then you become this large column of energy. A single mind, like a group mind, begins to form, and everyone's energy melds together. And then when you get to the point where you're pulling in the energy, you've got the energy coming up from the earth and it's going up that way. And then you call in the energy coming down into the circle from, the life force energy and bring it in. And you get all that in. You've sort of built on a magical and energetic level a column of light that actually is visible on the other side and to other beings and so forth. And the gods and goddesses, if you want to think of them that way. And then, as a group, we would do the healing chant. And with the healing chant, deep in my bones, the goddess is alive. Deep in my cells and blood, the life force is strong. Deep in my heart and spirit, I believe I will heal. I feel the goddess at my core, filling me with strength and health. Abundant life force of the universe flow in me and banish all disease. My blood, my bones, my cells in my body are healing now, are healing now. The goddess force is in me and healing me now. And as you repeat that, we would repeat that 9 times. And after we have done the beginning part, the sacred tree meditation well, and have connected together on this energetic plane, do the healing chant well and connect with each other with that, with all of our voices raised together. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, at that point, the goddess would actually manifest in the middle of the circle on her own, outside of any of us, not needing a high priestess to do it. She would just come in, and when that would happen, we would all feel it. And it would be a moment of sacred beauty and wonder and amazement to feel that presence coming in. And in order for that to happen, as the quote unquote high priestess of the group, when we were doing the meditation and so forth, I could never completely just relax and become a part of it because I was monitoring everyone else in the group, what their energy was doing, whether it was working together, how well it was flowing, whether there were blockages here and there, trying to modify things so that they would flow better and be paying attention to the overall picture. And that is more of the role of the high priestess, in that it is that role to serve the purposes of the group energetically, visually, whatever, I don't know the right word for that, to monitor that kind of energy and help lead the group so that the energy is going the way the group wants it to. Not everyone can see that as well, which is one of the reasons why usually it's only a few people that are in a group that end up capable of having the skill set to take on that role. So the potential problems with having that role in a group are the ego boost, because there's a part of that time, like if you're doing like the drawing down the moon or something like that, where you are the center of attention, the center of the ritual energy and the group energy and so forth. And some people have an ego blow up and meltdown that can happen because of that. And jealousies can appear and so forth, and it can be a pretty good mess. But that's something to consider, is one of the things you can do to alleviate that problem is to have a group where roles are traded, where people get to try and experience that role for themselves so they don't feel like they're being left behind or left out or they're less than and so forth. And that actually fits in with the whole concept of trying to teach and train a group of individuals to do effective group work. One of the things that you're supposed to be paying attention to is what is someone good at? And so you figure out what they're good at. You figure out, are they good at grounding? Are they good at getting in touch with certain elements, like, is it easier for them to connect with and call in the fire or the earth or the air or the water or the spirit? Where are their strengths when it comes to that? And that's going to be their natural affinity to whatever the element that they have the most experience and comfort with. And you're going to find that, different people are going to have different levels of comfort. It's not everybody's going to be the same thing. It's like, I've never seen that happen. Once you've identified what they're strongest with, you help encourage them to do that, but then you need to challenge people to work with the element that they're least comfortable with. And that's part of the inner work, part of the shadow work, part of the developmental work that needs to be done. People need to identify where their weak points are and then consciously go about trying to find out what is the blockage that's causing them difficulty to relate to that element or that aspect of ritual or whatever it happens to be. Because ritual will bring up the most basic and primal fears, questions, and doubts that people have. So if you come from a background of, say, Christianity, Catholicism, or, something like that, which is a lot of people in this country at least, most households are seem to be people are often raised in that. It's very rare for a person to be raised in a pagan household. There are some more happening now, which is nice, but still, for the majority of people, even if they're raised in an alternative kind of household, we are still absorbing these Christian aspects of what is and isn't safe, concepts of good and evil, concepts of light and dark, of what should or shouldn't be done, that kind of thing. And the unconscious connects with all of that and attaches a fear to doing magic. It's not an uncommon reaction that people are afraid of some aspect of magic because they can be afraid of the power, of claiming their power and having the power, and what does that mean? They can be afraid of punishment, that they've tried to use the power to get something they want, or think too highly of themselves and they're going to get squashed because of it. There's a huge range of potential reactions, psychologically speaking, that happen because of what has seeped into our unconscious through the media, life, people that we know, things that we've read, things we've been told. And the younger we are when we hear these things, the more difficult it is to root those things out. So, like we've talked about before, the reason for shadow work, that's the reason for shadow work. And when that stuff starts to come up in a group, if people are committed to paying attention to the signals, then they can actually actively work with the issue that arises instead of translating it into you're after me, you don't understand me, you're out to get me, this group is doing evil stuff, I don't know, any number of things. And we've had some bizarre reactions with some of the people that we've worked with over the years. We had one woman who was very interested, she was committed, she went to classes with us, we were taking classes from someone else, and then she freaked out when the idea of robes came up. And that was her trigger, was like, people in robes, something bad is happening, this is bad. And she kind of dropped the whole thing at that point, pretty much, because she couldn't get past this idea that was an artificially externalized, created idea that she had absorbed from somewhere, probably watching shows and movies and cult documentaries or whatever. And instead of looking at, like, what is the origin of this issue? Where does this come from? Does this make sense? Can I get past this? Which is the shadow work. That's the whole point of personal self-development. And then you can make a choice. You can look at the origins of, if you can identify the origin of the fear, anxiety, panic attack, whatever it happens to be, emotional response, find the origin of it. What does that actually track back to? That track back to a person, a situation in childhood, a closely held belief that you have no idea where it came from and what it is, but you can identify that it's somewhere, from somewhere. And then you have to be willing to take that notion, that idea, and look at it from the outside and then question it. Does this make sense? Is this a real thing? Do I believe this at my core, and I'm just decided that this is reality and there's nothing else to do, so I need to leave? Or is this something I can like challenge and change? And that's the whole point, in my opinion, is to look at and find and challenge these assumptions about the reality of the universe and how it was. That's one of the things they talked about in the therapy that I was in, which I thought was very informative. My basic assumptions about how the universe worked were wrong. And being able to identify what those assumptions were, so then I could challenge those assumptions in real life, find different circumstances, different situations, or what have you, in order to promote that change in my perceptions and my way of thinking. So that then I could be me instead of be a version of me that's reacting to a set of beliefs that don't really account or count as anything in reality, like my belief that I was intrinsically evil and that nothing I ever did would be able to get rid of that. That was clearly something I absorbed from Christianity, from Sunday school when I was like 5 years old or something, and being a girl, etc., and all the different stories and myths that went along with that. And that eventually that would just rise up and take over, and that would be the end of everything. And that I infected other people with violence. That was another big thing. That was a part of my core for a long time, and it isn't anymore. So that's part of what happens in a group. So back to like the roles and so forth. So the high priest role is similar to the high priestess role in the sense that the high priest is the one who's supposed to be able to embody the God energy. And of course, you've got groups that don't use male energy at all, certain Dianic groups. Some do and some don't. So, this is just a very basic kind of overall structure. I've been in both kinds of groups. I prefer the one with male and female energy because, life, babies, that kind of thing. That the world in physicality expresses itself through that kind of energetic stuff. But again, inside of yourself, you've got both. And that's one of the other things. So in our group, one of our female coveners was extremely good at pulling in the god. So she had a much stronger male affinity personality. And when Ian wasn't available to do that because he was otherwise indisposed for whatever reason, and we needed to have the male energy, like for the drawing down the moon ritual, for example, she could embody that. So it's not like they're gender specific roles, they're just the names of the roles. And it's a good idea for everyone to try their hand at being able to pull in the male or female aspect of deity, or the androgynous aspect of deity, because there's plenty of those out there as well. So it's not like a hard and fast rule. One of the other things that can happen in the structure of a coven is delusion. The delusional thinking that we're more powerful than we are, more important than we are, and trying to stay balanced. So humility is really important when it comes to working with other people, to allowing them the space to discover themselves and find out if they're actually fit for being in a group, if that's what they really want, or if that's the right group. There have to be some really strong common bonds between people in order for you to magic together. But one of the things that Starhawk said in her book was like when the high priestess got out of hand and started thinking she was the goddess, it was the role of the rest of the coveners to sort of literally or figuratively smack her over the side of the head and say, hey, hello, you are not the end all and be all of all things. You might embody that from time to time, but guess what? You're still human. And so, trying to have a sense of humor about it all is a good idea. So when people are like, the common misconception about groups from movies is that you have to have like individual members for each of the elements. Like, everyone embodies an element. So you have to have a minimum of 4 people, someone who does earth, someone who does air, someone who does fire, and someone who does water. That's not true at all. You can be by yourself and embody all of those things and not need anyone else. You can have 20 people and they can be all kinds of different things. And, it's like, it is just a, yeah, common misconception, I guess is the best way of putting that. So if you're going to have an effective group, having some basic things that you do on a regularly to build up the energy of that particular activity, like us with the sacred tree meditation and the healing chant, and having a goal, a purpose. And with our group, it was healing, sending healing energy to individuals and to the world to help the earth, in, as an extra kind of thing. The Amethyst Crystal Web Project came out of all of that kind of stuff. And like, how can we have a positive impact on the environment magically as well as physically? So a group needs to have a common purpose, a reason why they're doing it. And then you have the individual needs of the people that are in the group. So you're working with one person at one point who maybe needs to do a childhood ritual and go back and speak to their inner child, and having the group there to support them when they're going through that can be vitally important and very powerful to have. You have grief rituals, which we're planning on actually this coming Samhain, between losing our coven member, who was the one who could embody the god, ironically, and in such a sad circumstance where she was found after several days in her house, and then my daughter-in-law lost her mother, and she has some stuff left unsaid for that, and my granddaughter lost her father, and she has a lot of unresolved issues there, and my daughter lost a good friend. So our Samhain this year is going to be pretty intense and have lots of tears and crying, I'm assuming, and a lot of processing and stuff to do, which is the purpose of the holiday to me anyway. And what ritual, one of the things ritual is for, is to provide this kind of safe environment for people to process things that are extremely personal and difficult in that way. But it's going to be interesting out. So there's different types of rituals, and of course there's the kinds of rituals throughout the year, which is the one we're talking about with Samhain. It's a perfect time for doing that because it is all about getting closer to the dead and being able to commune with them and so forth, and helping to process unresolved communications, like, the person that you hadn't talked to in years, that you never got a chance to say hey to, or the person who was really close to you who you didn't get a chance to talk to them before they passed because they were taken away in an ambulance, or you were out of town, or you were somewhere else, or whatever the unresolved issue might be. I, it's, you can create a ritual around that. And my early rituals were very much around healing my child, my inner child, and working with my dreams and so forth, and and yeah. So it really depends upon the needs. We had one ritual here, which was an unwedding, as it were, where someone was leaving a spouse or significant other, and we had a spontaneous, sudden idea that just came to mind. Decided that we needed to unbind her from her ritual, her, yeah, the magical, energetic connection. Wasn't magic in any sense, but the energetic connection that developed between them. And we just came up with this spontaneous thing and made her go around and confront. She was pretty intensely affected by that, and then gave her back to herself. I can't even remember exactly what we did, but it was very powerful. And so when there is a genuine need there that that needs some transformative focus, group energy is extremely helpful for that kind of thing. And yeah. So I think that finding people that are willing to continue along the path when they meet their shadow self is a challenge. And many people fall by the wayside when they get to that point. They don't have the fortitude or the willingness to go through the barrier that they've put up for themselves or that they've agreed to on some level without knowing it, and break through to the other side to become individuated and self-determined as to what kind of a human being they want to be, and make those conscious choices. And for me, that's what this is all about. It's about personal self-development. It's at the core of all ritual, magic, whatever, is personal self-development. And the better you develop yourself, the better you know yourself, the better you take responsibility for your own stuff, your own feelings, your own reactions, your emotions, your thoughts, your perceptions of reality, your fantasies, your assumptions about how the world works, the more you can actually ask constructive questions about that and look at it without being attached to the outcome. So then it becomes less threatening, the better witch or magical user you're going to be. And that's the long and the short of it. So one of the things that we also did when it came to the elements and so forth and calling in the elements, I actually had these little discs that I made. We were going to start using them. We broke up before we got to use them, but I got the idea from another group and I thought it was great, where you can make a little sign or painting or something like that that has each kind of role on it. So whether it's the element itself, whether it is the god or the goddess, and that kind of thing, and if you have enough people in the group for all the roles, then you can put those little discs in a bag and shake it up, and then people pick it out. Then the gods or the universe or whatever decide what role you're going to try on that night and see how you do. So it can become a really good learning coven, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a learning group, not just, a, I don't know, doing a basic ritual because it's that time of year kind of thing. I wanted it to be a dynamic, changing, growing, living, breathing, transformative experience for everybody. Not everybody was on board. I have high expectations, apparently. So, we're not perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But by allowing ourselves to try out the different roles and so forth and getting into it and investigating it and finding out what our skill set is, what we can add to a group of energy, and so forth, and making sure that everybody is allowed to leave if they feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, if they're not ready to like face whatever it is that is blocking their way, and be okay with that. And I think too that being the leader of a group brings with it not just a lot of self-sacrifice, because it isn't about you. If you are the high priestess or high priest of the group, it isn't about you. It's about the group. Um, and service is an important aspect of that. And trying to set the ego aside as much as possible so that people can be who and what they are. And sometimes letting them be who they are is uncomfortable for them. And being a teacher or whatever is not confrontational, but definitely not what's the right word for that? it is sort of confrontational, is part of it, but no nonsense. There is a one of those Zen stories that is pretty effective when it comes to understanding about learning. That comes up for me on a regular basis because I think it's a good thing for me to remember. And so there's a Zen master, and a student comes up and wants to learn from the master. And the student is very excited to meet the master and tells the master how great they are as a student, how good they're going to be, how wonderful they're going to be, how much they already know, how everything is fantastic, and how they've chosen this individual, this master, because they've looked into all the masters and decided that this one is the right one for them. And so the master sits there at the table and starts to pour a cup of tea. And as the master pours the tea into the cup and keeps on pouring, and the cup overflows and starts spreading around all over the table, and he keeps on pouring the tea until the student notices that the water is flowing out, the tea is flowing out of the cup, and then asks the master, why is that happening? And the master says, you're already too full. You're so full, there's no room for anything else. So when you've emptied your cup, come back. And I thought that was just such a great story, example of what it means to be both a student and a teacher. It sort of encapsulates the whole process right there. So someone comes to you and wants to learn, that's a great thing. So, depends. But yeah, it's complicated. There's no doubt about it. But I think that group work is worthwhile. I really do. As challenging as it can be. That's one of the reasons why when we end a group circle, we always have like a meal, chit chat to get sort of back into normal reality and try and take the rarefied air out of it a little bit. And, remember that we're all people who have taken on a role and experienced something maybe extraordinary and transformative, but still have a life and we still have things we have to do and insecurities and whatever else there might be, since we're all human and no one is perfect. So I think that probably covers sort of the basics of some of the different roles that are there. And like I said, you figure out what you're good at. So whatever it is that you're good at is going to be something you can bring to a group, and what you're weak at is something you can work on, hopefully within a group, so that you can allow yourself the time, the space, and the vulnerability. And it's okay to admit you don't know something or that you're confused. Learn how to ask good questions. Something isn't working in a group. If people know how to communicate and ask the right kind of questions, it can make all the difference. So it's important to put assumptions aside and to find out what actually someone is thinking instead of assuming that you know what's going on. And that's true for all of us. It's really hard not to make assumptions. We all do it without even realizing it. And projections. And projections are both negative and positive. Like you can't really get to know an individual either in a group or outside of a group unless you drop your idea of who you think they are. That's how we get to actually know one another. And that takes time. Groups are slow to build and nurture, and there's a lot of ups and downs when it comes to them. And be prepared, if you're going to be doing this, to have your feelings hurt on more than one occasion. Because if you get too attached to what's happening and the people that are in it, somebody will fail to fulfill your expectations, and then that will be sad, but normal. So it's up to us as individuals to look at our expectations and to reformat those. It's like change how we view. And reality is what it is. It's not what we want it to be, or what we imagine it to be, or what we wish it to be. You know, it's like it's a process. It happens. That's the way it works. So hopefully this has been more enlightening than it sounds like in my head or on my voice here. And as always, this is for everybody. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. And try to ask them in the light or in the manner in which we're talking about this in the first place. As a, can you give me more clarity on this? What do you mean by that? Kind of thing. So I guess we're going to go now and say goodbye and talk to you all later. This has been Siofra's Magic Alcove, and I'm Siofra Bradigan. Blessed be.